26 cars, one push, one driver in the middle of it all. On lap 115 of the Jack Links 500 at Talladega Superspeedway, the most dangerous 2 miles in American motorsport delivered exactly what it always promises: absolute unforgiving chaos. And right at the center of it, leading the race, was Bubba Wallace. One moment he was out front, controlling the race, in his number 23 XI Racing Toyota. The next, his car was sideways at nearly 200 miles per hour, sliding helplessly toward the outside barrier, while an entire field of NASCAR's fastest machines had nowhere to go. The chain reaction that followed lasted only seconds. The wreckage it left behind, 26 cars, a 1-0-minute red flag, and some of the biggest names in the sport parked permanently for the day, took considerably longer to process. And then the internet caught fire. Within hours, a story started spreading that NASCAR had suspended Bubba Wallace, that this crash was the final straw, that one of the most talked about drivers in the sport was done, finished, and that Talladega had finally broken him for good. Here is what you need to know. Most of that story is completely wrong. But buried underneath the misinformation is a real story, one about a broken car package, a Toyota instability problem nobody wanted to talk about, a 2-3-year-old kid who just won his first cup race in the most dramatic fashion possible, and the mounting pressure inside one of NASCAR's most high-profile teams. That is the story worth telling. And it starts exactly where Bubba Wallace's afternoon fell apart. Lap 115, turn 3, Talladega, the 26th of April, 2026. Let's reconstruct the incident properly because the details matter. Talladega Superspeedway is a 2.66-mile oval, the longest track in NASCAR. Cars run in tightly packed groups called drafts, where aerodynamic cooperation between vehicles is the only way to maintain competitive speed. One car pushes another from behind, and together they go faster than either could alone. It's a delicate, high-speed partnership that requires precision, trust, and a significant amount of luck. Wallace had moved to the middle lane, a position that requires a clean, well-timed push from the car behind to maintain momentum. Chastain provided that push, but the force was more than Wallace's no. 23 Toyota could handle at that moment. The car went sideways, and as NASCAR.com reported, the shove sent Wallace's number 23 Toyota sideways toward the outside safer barrier directly in front of Cole Custer. 26 of the 40 cars were officially collected in the incident. Among those unable to continue were Joey Logano, a 3-time Cup Series champion and 3-time Talladega winner, along with Ryan Blaney and Brad Keselowski. Championship leader Tyler Reddick, who had announced a multi-year contract extension with 23XI Racing just hours before the race, suffered damage but managed to recover and finish 14th, maintaining his commanding 110-point lead in the standings. Wallace himself was evaluated and released from the infield care center. Speaking to the Fox Sports broadcast immediately after, he said, "Got wrecked there, unfortunately. Our Xfinity Toyota Camry was a little unstable getting pushed, but manageable. Maybe that hard of a hit was too much, and so unfortunately we wiped out a bunch of cars. Got to debrief, figure out how to be better." Publicly, measured, but in a brief exchange with journalist Matt Weaver, Wallace's assessment was considerably more direct. When asked about the incident, Wallace said simply, "He wrecked me." 2 words, no elaboration needed. This was also Wallace's 300th Cup Series start, a significant career milestone that got almost completely buried under coverage of the crash itself. Here is the part of this story that most viral coverage completely ignored. Bubba Wallace was not the only driver who experienced this exact problem on that exact day. In Stage 2, Christopher Bell in the number 20 Joe Gibbs Racing Toyota also struggled under a push from a trailing car. In the final stage, Eric Jones in the number 9 43. Toyota lost control exiting, turn 4 after contact, spinning multiple times before stalling in the infield grass. That incident actually brought out the final caution of the race and set up the green-white checkered finish. 3 Toyota drivers, 3 separate incidents, all involving instability under pushing contact at superspeedway speeds. Joey Logano, who drives for Team Penske and has spent years competing at Talladega, put it plainly after the race. You have round bumpers and unstable cars and cars that you're able to pop the bubble real easy and get to each other's bumper. But when you get there, you've got to be careful because they're not stable. When you get two basketballs against each other, it's not going to push straight. It's frustrating. Ryan Blaney, one of the drivers eliminated in the lap 115 crash, was equally measured in his assessment, and notably, he placed no blame on Wallace or Chastain. As Blaney put it, "I feel like we all just got pinballing off each other there. It's not like there's any blame on anybody. It's what this thing is." He went further. "We're either fuel saving or we're running all over each other just because that's what this car is, and that's how you go forward." Blaney has been vocal about wanting NASCAR to address the next-gen car's instability at superspeedways, but he acknowledged the reality. "I don't really see it changing this year at all." Motorsports journalist Austin Konensky summarized the situation accurately on social media. "I'm not blaming Bubba Wallace or Ross Chastain for that wreck at Talladega. The Toyotas haven't been good at receiving pushes over the last few years. It could have been one of his teammates, and it's a similar situation. It was a recipe for disaster." When you look at all three Toyota incidents across the race, Wallace in stage 2, Bell shortly after, Jones in the final stage, the conclusion becomes difficult to avoid. This was not a Bubba Wallace problem. This was a Toyota Superspeedway package problem, and it had been visible all day long. The Talladega crash didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened as the direct consequence of a structural problem in how NASCAR currently stages races at superspeedways, a problem the sanctioning body tried to address heading into 2026 and failed. In an attempt to reduce the extreme fuel conservation strategies that had turned Talladega and Daytona races into slow-motion parades, NASCAR instituted an extended first stage of 98 laps covering more than half the total race distance. The theory was that a longer stage would force drivers to manage fuel more realistically and produce more genuine racing. What actually happened? Drivers adjusted, conserved fuel even more carefully through a 9-8 lap stage, and then when stage 2 opened, they went to full throttle simultaneously. 10 laps later, 26 cars were in the wall. Logano captured the impossible situation facing every driver at Talladega. "It's frustrating. What do you want? Save fuel or crash? Pick one." That's what it feels like right now. You've got round bumpers on these things. The cars are unstable, and once everyone starts pushing and racing aggressive, it's going to happen. So until we fix that stuff, we're going to continue seeing it, unfortunately. Fan reaction across social media and NASCAR communities was pointed. The argument gaining traction is that Talladega has become less a test of driving skill and more a survival lottery where elite drivers like Kyle Larson and Ryan Blaney get eliminated through no fault of their own, while midfield teams sometimes inherit top finishes purely by avoiding the carnage. Atlanta Motor Speedway is frequently cited as the counterexample, a drafting track where aerodynamic handling genuinely differentiates good drivers from great ones, and where the 3-lane racing that Talladega can no longer produce still happens regularly. The 9-8 lap stage 1 experiment did not solve the problem. And until the next-gen car's superspeedway package is fundamentally revised, something Blaney suggested might only be possible during the off-season speed weeks in January. Drivers, teams, and fans can expect more races that follow the same pattern: conservation, chaos, carnage. While the story of the day centered on the lap 115 crash, the race itself produced a genuinely remarkable finish and an equally remarkable winner. Carson Hocevar, 23 years old, driving the number 77 Spire Motorsports Chevrolet, had been one of the drivers who survived the big one and positioned himself for a shot at the win. He led 19 of the final 37 laps, held off 3 late restarts, and on the final lap used a drafting push from Alex Bowman's No. 48 Hendrick Motorsports Chevrolet to edge past Chris Buescher's No. 17 RFK Racing Ford by just 0.114 seconds. The winning margin was razor thin. The victory was his first in the NASCAR Cup Series, his 91st start in the Premier Series. It made him the 13th driver to earn a first career win at Talladega Superspeedway. Hocevar's victory celebration immediately became part of the story. Sitting on the windowsill of his moving Chevrolet, one hand on the wheel, he drove down the front stretch, waving to the crowd, then steered nose first into the outside wall to perform a burnout before climbing to the roof. His co-owner, Jeff Dickerson, said afterward, "He looked like Shamu hanging out the window." When NASCAR CEO Steve O'Donnell was asked about the unconventional celebration, his response was straightforward: "I'm good with it." In his post-race comments, Hocevar spoke with genuine emotion. "I'm so thankful. This is the biggest dream I've ever thought of. Thank you, everybody. I couldn't have done it any better way. Hopefully, my grandfather is watching. My grandmother died last year, and I'm just so thankful I can give my grandfather a trophy now." It was the second first-time winner in 3 races Ty Gibbs had won at Bristol Motor Speedway 2 weeks earlier. Hocevar joined him as proof that the 2026 NASCAR Cup Series season is producing new faces at the front of the field. Now to the claim that has been driving views across social media and YouTube that Bubba Wallace was suspended following the 2026 Talladega race. This is false. No suspension was issued for Wallace in connection with the 26th of April 2026 incident at Talladega Superspeedway. Every credible source covering the race, NASCAR.com, the Associated Press, Fox Sports, multiple independent outlets confirms this. The crash was treated as a racing incident, consistent with how NASCAR handles the inevitable contact that occurs at superspeedways. The suspension that content creators are referencing, sometimes deliberately, sometimes through careless research, occurred in October 2022, following a completely different incident at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. That situation was fundamentally different in nature. During the South Point 400 at Las Vegas, Wallace, having just won Stage 1, was forced into the wall by Kyle Larson. Wallace then turned left into Larson's car deliberately, sending Larson spinning into the barrier and collecting Christopher Bell in the process. After the crash, Wallace physically shoved Larson in the immediate aftermath. Both the on-track action and the post-crash confrontation were captured on camera. NASCAR suspended Wallace for 1 race. The governing body's chief operating officer, Steve O'Donnell, explained the decision directly. "Our actions are really specific to what took place on the racetrack. And when we look at how that incident occurred, in our minds, really a dangerous act. We thought that was intentional and put other competitors at risk." 23XI Racing did not appeal the suspension. Wallace himself issued a public apology, saying, "I want to apologize for my actions on Sunday following the on-track incident with Kyle Larson and the number 5 car. My behavior does not align with the core values that are shared by 23XI Racing and our partners. That is the suspension on record." 2022, Las Vegas. A completely different set of circumstances. The 2026 Talladega incident involved no intentional contact, no post-crash confrontation, and resulted in no disciplinary action from NASCAR. Connecting the two events is either a product of poor research or a deliberate choice to manufacture a controversy that does not exist. Setting aside the manufactured suspension narrative, there is a legitimate question about where Bubba Wallace stands within 23's racing heading into the second half of the 2026 season. 23XI Racing, co-owned by NBA legend Michael Jordan and NASCAR driver Denny Hamlin, has grown into a genuine 2-car Cup Series operation with a Toyota manufacturer partnership. On the morning of the Talladega race, Tyler Reddick announced a multi-year contract extension with the team, cementing his long-term future with the organization. Reddick has been dominant in 2026, 5 wins in the season's opening races, 10 of 13 career wins accumulated since joining 23XI in 2023, and a 110-point lead in the Cup Series championship standings over the second-place driver, who is Denny Hamlin himself, one of the team's co-owners. Wallace, by contrast, has finished outside the top 30 for the 3rd time in 5 races. That is a difficult stretch by any measure, and it creates an internal performance gap within the organization that is difficult to ignore. There is no public indication of a contract dispute, a team directive to replace Wallace, or any disciplinary action, but the numbers tell a story about where each driver within 23XI currently stands in terms of on-track results. The pressure is real. The performance gap is real. What is not real is any suggestion of a suspension, a forced departure, or a breakdown in the relationship between Wallace and the organization based on the 2026 Talladega race. Bubba Wallace has been a significant and often polarizing figure in NASCAR for years. The 2020 noose incident, also at Talladega Superspeedway, placed him at the center of one of the sport's most significant cultural conversations. His on-track rivalries, his advocacy, his personality, none of it fits neatly into the traditional mold that NASCAR has historically handed its drivers. That history is real. The complexity of his position within the sport is real. But the real questions coming out of the 2026 Talladega race have nothing to do with a suspension that never happened. They center on whether NASCAR can fix a superspeedway racing format that is increasingly delivering the same result, fuel conservation, followed by mass carnage regardless of adjustments to stage length. They center on whether Toyota and NASCAR can address the instability issues that contributed to not one, but 3 separate incidents during the Jack Links 500. And they center on whether Bubba Wallace can find the on-track results that would secure his long-term future at 23XI Racing, a team that is very clearly building its competitive identity around Tyler Reddick's success. Next up is Texas Motor Speedway on May 3, a 1.5-mile oval near Fort Worth that is about as different from Talladega as any track on the NASCAR Cup Series schedule. The defending winner at Texas is Joey Logano, one of the drivers who couldn't continue after lap 115 at Talladega. The championship battle, the team dynamics at 23XI, and Wallace's trajectory will all come into sharper focus as the season progresses. What the 2026 Talladega race actually showed is this. The sport has a package problem at superspeedways, Toyota has a stability problem under push, and Carson Hocevar is a name that will be in the conversation for wins for a long time. Bubba Wallace was in the wrong place when an imperfect car met an imperfect push at 200 miles per hour. That is a racing incident. Nothing more, nothing less.